Imagine knowing that one of the greatest musical legends of all time spent his final days surrounded by mystery, pain, and whispers of secrets that no one had ever told before. Bob Marley, the king of reggae, had always been larger than life, bringing people together with his music, his energy, and his message of unity. But what really happened in his final moments? After decades of silence, Rita Marley, his wife, finally spoke up, revealing details that could change everything we thought we knew about Bob's last days. You won't believe what she revealed, and trust me, this story will leave you shocked. It all started in 1977 in London. Bob, being an avid soccer player, was playing a regular game when he injured his toe. At first, it seemed like a minor injury, just a simple bruise, but as time went on, the pain didn't go away. In fact, it got worse. Bob, known for his toughness and resilience, kept pushing through, not letting it slow him down. But what he didn't know was that this small injury was the beginning of a deadly battle that no one could have imagined. Doctors finally diagnosed him with a rare and aggressive form of skin cancer called acral lentiginous melanoma. It wasn't just a simple toe injury, it was cancer and it was spreading. Now, here's the twist. Despite his diagnosis, Bob Marley, a devout Rastafarian, chose to trust in natural healing methods. In his faith, amputation, one of the suggested treatments, was seen as a desecration of the body. Bob refused to go down that route. Instead, he believed in the power of faith and the natural remedies that had always guided him. The craziest part, he continued to perform, spreading his message of love, peace, and unity to millions, while in reality, his body was falling apart. Even though he was in agony, he rarely showed it. He would stand in front of thousands of fans, smiling, dancing, and singing as if nothing was wrong. But those closest to him knew the truth. Bob was struggling. Rita Marley, his wife, later admitted that she watched him wither away in silence, trying to hide his pain from the world. Bob's health continued to decline, and by 1980, it had become undeniable that something was seriously wrong. During a performance at Madison Square Garden, Bob collapsed on stage. The crowd was stunned, his bandmates were shocked, but Bob, ever the performer, brushed it off, telling everyone he was fine. But this time the truth was out there. His cancer had spread far beyond his toe. It had reached his brain, his lungs, and even his liver. The reality was sinking in for everyone around him, but Bob wasn't ready to face it. Instead of seeking the help he desperately needed, he continued to trust in his faith and the belief that somehow everything would work out. But things weren't working out. His friends, his family, and even his closest supporters urged him to seek proper medical treatment. Bob, though, remained torn. He believed deeply in his Rastafarian beliefs, and seeking conventional medicine felt like betraying those beliefs. He believed that Yah, his higher power, would guide him, and that healing would come through natural means. Yet, as time passed, his health only worsened. Bob's condition was critical, but he refused to let go of his faith, even as his body grew weaker with each passing day. The tension between his spiritual beliefs and the reality of his condition became even more evident when Bob made a shocking decision. Rita Marley recalls how Bob decided to travel to Germany to see a controversial holistic doctor named Dr. Joseph Eisels. Dr. Eisels specialized in alternative treatments for cancer, focusing on things like diet, detoxification, and strengthening the immune system. Bob had already been through a series of unproven treatments, but he held on to a glimmer of hope. For a brief moment, there were signs of improvement. Bob showed some positive changes, and his family, friends, and fans dared to hope that maybe, just maybe, this was the miracle he had been waiting for. But as time went on, the cancer didn't slow down. Bob's body continued to deteriorate. The treatments, no matter how unconventional, couldn't save him. As Bob's health continued to fade, the battle between his faith and the inevitable truth was becoming impossible to ignore. His once strong body, capable of moving millions with his music, had become frail and weak. He was now confined to a hospital bed, surrounded by those who loved him. And yet, through all the pain, Bob remained spiritually strong. He didn't fear death, but he knew his time was running out. He spoke about his faith, love, and unity, even in his weakest moments. But the most powerful moment came when he turned to his son, Ziggy. In his final hours, Bob whispered words that would stay with Ziggy for the rest of his life. Money can't buy life. It was a statement that summed up everything Bob had lived for. Despite the fame, the wealth, and the adoration, he understood that nothing in this world could save him now. As Bob Marley's life began to slip away, the question lingered. What truly happened in those final days? Why had it taken so long for the truth to come out? Rita Marley, who had been by Bob's side through it all, knew more than anyone about his pain, his struggles, and his final moments. But as she began to share what she knew, the world would soon realize that the story of Bob Marley's final days was far more complex than anyone had ever imagined. But as we move deeper into the story, you won't believe how things took an even darker turn. The world had already been shaken by Bob Marley's diagnosis, but what followed in the final months was a roller coaster of hope, disappointment, and shocking twists. As Bob's battle with cancer grew more intense, the true scale of the situation became clearer. His life was slipping away, but there was more to the story than anyone could have imagined. Bob's decision to refuse conventional treatment wasn't just an act of faith. It was a reflection of his deep Rastafarian beliefs. He had always trusted in the power of natural healing, but as the cancer spread, it became more and more evident that his faith alone might not be enough. But here's the shocking part. Bob's refusal to seek modern medical help didn't just affect him. It affected everyone around him, including Rita Marley, who was caught in the middle of his unwavering spiritual journey and the harsh reality of his deteriorating health. Despite the efforts of those closest to him, including Rita, who desperately tried to get him to accept conventional treatments, Bob remained firm in his beliefs. But there's something you might not know. There were others, influential figures in his life, who were not helping. Some were encouraging him to stick with natural remedies, while others, perhaps driven by greed or misguided loyalty, refused to admit how serious the situation had become. Rita would later reveal that she believed Bob was being surrounded by people who were not looking out for his best interests, and this only added to the confusion and frustration she felt. Bob's declining health was now impossible to ignore. He had become a shadow of the man he once was. The once vibrant and energetic performer who captivated audiences worldwide now struggled to walk, barely able to move without assistance. The crazy part? He still performed. He went on stage, barely able to stand, but he did it anyway, never allowing his fans to see the true extent of his suffering. It wasn't just his body that was giving up. It was his spirit too, slowly dimming under the weight of everything he was going through. Rita, who had been by his side through all of this, felt helpless. She had witnessed the changes, the pain, and the slow, painful decline of the man she loved. And then the unthinkable happened. Bob's collapse at Madison Square Garden in 1980 was a wake-up call for everyone around him. This wasn't just exhaustion. This was something much worse. It wasn't just the toe anymore. It was everything. The cancer had spread like wildfire, and it was now clear that time was running out. Even though he insisted he was fine, everyone knew this was no ordinary illness. Bob's body was failing him, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. But even in his weakest moments, Bob still believed he could push through. He continued to tour, to perform, and to spread his message. Here's where it gets interesting. While Bob struggled with his health, he also struggled with the reality of what was happening to his legacy. Bob Marley was a global icon, not just for his music, but for his message. His beliefs were so deeply ingrained in him that they shaped every part of his life, including his death. And while Bob was fighting his battle, a storm was brewing behind the scenes. There were those around him who weren't just concerned with his health, they were concerned with what would happen to his fortune after he was gone. The craziest part of this, Bob had never written a will, and that meant his entire estate, including his music rights, properties, and investments, would be up for grabs. After his collapse, Bob was rushed to the hospital, but the damage had already been done. The cancer had spread to his brain, lungs, and liver. The situation was dire, and the possibility of survival was slipping away. Bob, who had always been a symbol of strength, now found himself vulnerable in ways he had never imagined. His family, his friends, and even his bandmates began to realize that they might lose him. But Bob, true to his nature, refused to give up hope. Despite the overwhelming odds, he continued to believe that somehow a miracle would save him. But here's the shocking part, that miracle never came. As Bob's health deteriorated, the whispers of conspiracy theories began to grow louder. Some believed his cancer wasn't natural, that something more sinister was at play. People began to question whether Bob's illness had been triggered by something other than bad luck. Was it really just cancer, or was there something else going on? Rumors began to surface about the 1976 assassination attempt that Bob survived. Was it possible that the attack had been orchestrated to silence him? And if that was true, could his cancer have been caused by something far more deliberate than we had ever thought? But as we dig deeper into Bob's final months, we realize there was far more going on than just a fight against cancer. Bob's last days were filled with confusion, secrecy, and decisions that would change the Marley family forever. The mystery surrounding his final days doesn't just lie in his health, but in the chaos that followed his death. The real shock comes when we learn how Bob's passing triggered a battle over his estate, his legacy, and the very people he trusted the most. As his health continued to decline, Rita Marley was by his side, witnessing the pain and suffering he endured. She tried everything she could to help him, but in the end, there was nothing that could change the inevitable. Bob Marley's life was coming to a close, and with it, the beginning of a new and much darker chapter for his family. As the world waited for news of Bob's passing, no one could have predicted what would happen next. The fallout from Bob Marley's death was about to shake his family to the core, and it all started with a secret that had been kept hidden for decades. But as the dust began to settle, the real drama surrounding Bob Marley's passing was just getting started. While the world mourned the loss of a legend, those closest to him found themselves thrust into a fierce battle over his legacy, a battle that would reveal shocking truths and betrayals no one could have predicted. And here's where things take a crazy turn. It wasn't just about money, fame, or control. It was about the family and the very values that Bob had fought for during his life. As we know, Bob Marley's death left an enormous void in the music world. His music wasn't just a soundtrack to an era, it was a movement. But what most people didn't know was that Bob's death also left a massive legal mess. Why? Because Bob Marley never wrote a will. This is where it gets interesting. Without a will, Bob's entire estate, which included his music catalog, properties, and investments, was up for grabs. And you won't believe how this triggered one of the most intense and bitter battles for control of his fortune. At the center of this struggle was Rita Marley, Bob's wife. Rita had always been by Bob's side, both as his partner and manager. But the absence of a will meant that the fight over his estate wasn't just between family members. It also involved business associates, record labels, and even government officials. Everyone saw an opportunity to cash in on Bob's success. The craziest part? The Marley family was caught in the middle of it all. With no clear plan for Bob's estate, legal battles quickly erupted, and what followed was nothing short of a nightmare. Rita Marley was determined to protect Bob's legacy, But her fight wasn't easy. Some members of Bob's extended family were less than supportive, and there were even rumors of people trying to exploit Bob's death for their own gain. But here's where it gets even more twisted. Some reports later revealed that Rita had taken a controversial step, allegedly forging Bob's signature on documents that transferred control of his estate to her and the Marley family. When this was uncovered, it caused even more chaos, leading to a series of legal complications and accusations of fraud. Rita found herself in the middle of a scandal that would stain Bob Marley's legacy for years to come. But what makes this story even more shocking? As the legal battles continued, more conspiracy theories about Bob's death began to surface. One of the most talked about theories suggested that Bob Marley's cancer was not a natural occurrence. Some believed it was deliberate, a result of an assassination attempt linked to the CIA. In 1976, just 2 years before Bob's cancer diagnosis, he was shot during an attack at his home in Kingston. Many speculated that this attack wasn't random, but rather part of a larger plot to silence him due to his influence in politics and global movements. The theory suggested that Bob's cancer may have been a result of this attack, possibly linked to a deadly toxin that was injected into his body during the shooting. But let me tell you, this is where things get really crazy. There was also talk about the infamous poison boot theory. The poison boot theory was as bizarre as it sounds. According to this theory, Bob had received a gift, a pair of boots, and when he tried them on, a sharp piece of metal inside pricked his toe, injecting a deadly substance into his body that caused the cancer. Some believe this was the real cause of Bob's illness, not just a random act of fate. Of course, there's no concrete evidence to support this theory, but it was enough to keep people talking. And here's the shocking part. Despite all these theories, no one could definitively prove what had caused Bob's death. The truth remained as elusive as ever, adding even more mystery to an already tragic story. Now, if you thought that was the end of the story, think again. After Bob's passing, his funeral became a spectacle in itself. Bob Marley wasn't just a musician. He was a global icon, a symbol of resistance, love, and unity. His funeral, held in Jamaica on May 21st, 1981, was attended by tens of thousands of mourners, including global celebrities and even the Jamaican Prime Minister. But despite the emotional tributes and the outpouring of love, a new controversy was beginning to unfold behind the scenes. Some rumors suggested that Bob's grave had been tampered with after his burial, and there were even whispers about plans to move his remains to Ethiopia, a country deeply connected to Rastafarian beliefs. But the drama didn't stop there. As time went on, there was growing speculation about Bob Marley's real legacy. Was it only about the music, or was there something more at play? The Marley family, already divided over the fight for his estate, now found themselves dealing with even more shocking revelations about Bob's life and death. What did Rita Marley really know about his final days? What secrets did Bob take to his grave? And why did so many people believe there was a conspiracy to take him down? This is where the story takes another twist. As Rita Marley later revealed, there were things Bob had been hiding, things that no one could have guessed. Even in his final days, Bob had kept certain aspects of his life and beliefs hidden from the public. But as the years went on, Rita finally opened up about the truth. And the more she spoke, the more the world realized how much of Bob Marley's story had remained untold until now. But what makes this story different from all the others? While the world mourned Bob Marley's death, it became clear that there was more to his life and legacy than anyone could have ever imagined. The shocking revelations about his final days and the ongoing battle over his estate only added fuel to the fire. Was it a conspiracy or just a series of tragic events that led to his untimely death? As we uncover the truth it's clear that Bob Marley's life and legacy will always remain shrouded in mystery, and the questions surrounding his death will likely never be fully answered. As the years passed, Bob Marley's name lived on, echoing through the sound of his music and the messages of peace and unity he spread across the world. But the mystery of his final days and the controversies surrounding his death continued to captivate people everywhere. And here's where things take an unexpected turn. Rita Marley, the woman who had stood by Bob's side through it all, finally decided to reveal the shocking truth about those last moments. And what she shared was more heartbreaking than anyone could have imagined. For decades, the world speculated about Bob Marley's final words. People had heard the rumors, but no one knew for sure what he said in his last moments. But as Rita opened up, the truth became clearer. Bob's last words were simple yet profound. Money can't buy life. Those words weren't just about material wealth, they were a reflection of Bob's entire belief system. He had spent his life preaching that love, unity, and faith were what mattered most. His death only cemented that truth. And here's where it gets really interesting. Those final words weren't just a statement, they were a warning. Bob had been betrayed by so many people throughout his career, but his final thoughts were centered around something bigger than himself. He knew his time was running out, and he knew the people who had stood by him weren't always the ones who had his best interests at heart. Rita Marley revealed that in his last days, Bob had become increasingly disillusioned with the music industry and the people who had tried to take advantage of his success. Despite all the fame and wealth, Bob Marley had come to realize that it was love and family that truly mattered. But here's the part that will hit you hard. Despite Bob's health rapidly declining, there was one thing he still held on to: hope. He didn't want to die. He fought until the very end, hoping for a miracle that could save him. Rita shared that at times, Bob would express his desire to keep fighting, but there was also a sense of acceptance. He knew he was nearing the end, but he wasn't afraid of death. In fact, he welcomed it as part of his journey. Rita described how in his weakest moments, Bob continued to speak of Jah's love and unity, and how even as he lay in that hospital bed, his spirit remained unbroken. But here's where the story takes another devastating turn. Rita Marley confessed that she had regrets. She wished she had done more. As Bob's health deteriorated, Rita had desperately tried to convince him to seek medical help earlier. She had urged him to take his condition seriously, but Bob, ever the warrior, refused. He didn't believe in modern medicine and was determined to heal himself through natural remedies and faith. Rita admitted that, looking back, she wished she had pushed harder, that she had done more to save him, but she knew Bob's mind was made up. And that's where the pain lay for Rita, in knowing that perhaps, just perhaps, Bob's death could have been prevented if only he had been more willing to trust in medical treatment. In the final hours before his death, Rita was there by his side, holding his hand, whispering words of comfort, and playing his favorite songs. She recalled how, despite everything, Bob still found the strength to smile. It was a smile filled with love, gratitude, and peace. Bob Marley may have been physically weak, but in those last moments, his spirit was stronger than ever. Rita also shared that she was there when Bob took his final breath. She felt his grip loosen, and with it, the world lost a legend. But even after Bob's death, the drama didn't end. While the Marley family was still grappling with the loss of a loved one, questions began to arise about the true circumstances surrounding Bob Marley's passing. Was it really just cancer, or was there something more sinister at play? Rumors continued to swirl about conspiracy theories, many of them questioning whether Bob Marley had been intentionally targeted due to his influence. After Bob's funeral, the controversy continued. The Marley family's fight for control over Bob's estate went on for years, with allegations of forgery, betrayal, and greed surfacing regularly. The music industry, with its unrelenting thirst for profits, sought to exploit Bob's name and image at every turn. And despite all the battles and betrayals, Bob Marley's music continued to inspire generations. His words still resonated with millions around the world, reminding them of the power of love, unity, and faith. But even in death, Bob Marley's legacy remained clouded by unanswered questions and shocking revelations. Rita Marley's decision to share the truth about Bob's final days has shed light on the deep emotional toll that his passing took on those who loved him most. The unanswered questions about Bob's death and the ongoing fight over his estate have only added to the mystery of his life and legacy. As the years go by, the world continues to mourn the loss of Bob Marley, but there's no denying that his influence is as powerful as ever. The music, the messages, the life, all of it is a testament to a man who, despite facing immense challenges, never lost sight of what truly mattered. Bob Marley's legacy is one of love, faith, and resistance against injustice. And even after all these years, the mystery surrounding his life and death only adds to the legend. But perhaps, as Rita Marley so eloquently put it, we'll never fully know the truth. Maybe the real answer lies in the music itself, in the powerful messages Bob left behind. Whatever the truth may be, one thing is certain: Bob Marley's spirit will live on forever, and his legacy will continue to inspire and provoke thought for generations to come.